There is something almost nobody tells you when you buy a beautiful potted plant at the store. Most of the plants sitting in those small plastic pots will not still be alive by next spring. Things get even worse when you try to save them with fresh soil fertilizer or more water. None of that can solve the problem if you chose a plant that was never suited to living in a container for years in the first place. Take a moment and stop blaming yourself, because the problem may never have been you. In this video, I am going to introduce 9 perennial plants that have real practical value, can handle limited root space, and do not require daily care. They can give you fruit leaves, root seasonings, or useful material for other plants. And plant number 9 is especially interesting because it is not grown for the kitchen. It produces something you can return to the soil and use to support the whole garden for years. Before we finish, you will also know how to choose the right perennial for your pot size, available light, and local climate. Keep watching, because this may be the last time you have to spend money replacing dead potted plants. How perennial plants survive and grow in containers. A perennial that thrives out in the garden will not necessarily survive in a pot, because a container changes almost everything around the root system. So before we get into 9 specific choices, I want to explain why some plants can live for years in pots, while others start to weaken after just one season. In the ground, roots can spread out to find water, nutrients, and cooler soil. In a pot, the root system is confined to a small amount of growing mix. That mix dries out quickly, heats up fast in the sun, and gets cold quickly when winter arrives. A pot that is too small causes the roots to circle around the sides and makes it harder for them to take up water. Growing mix that stays too wet can cut off air to the roots and cause rot, while mix that gets too dry can leave the plant wilted after just one hot day. Winter is often the toughest test. Roots in the garden are protected by the entire mass of soil around them, while roots in a pot are separated from cold wind and freezing temperatures by only a thin container wall. That means a plant that handles cold well in the ground may not be safe in the same area if it is sitting in a small wet pot exposed to the wind. When I call a plant low maintenance, I do not mean you can ignore it. I mean plants that do not need water every day, do not require constant feeding, have few pest and disease problems, can be harvested and grow back, and do not need to be replaced every spring. So we are going to look at each plant one at a time. Plants grown for fruit, leaves, roots, and flavor plants that need deep pots, and plants that produce material to feed the other containers. Each one has its own value limits and care needs. If you keep a garden notebook, now is the time to write this down. Plant 1. Alexandria. Alpine strawberry. The first plant does not produce the big strawberries you usually see at the grocery store, but it solves the exact problem that makes many people hesitate to grow strawberries in containers. It does not send runners spreading in every direction. The Alexandria alpine strawberry grows in a small, tidy clump and produces hardly any long runners that need constant trimming. You can place a pot near the kitchen door, beside a walkway, or on the porch, then pick the fruit as soon as it ripens. The berries are small, but they are usually fragrant and full of flavor. I like them with yogurt, cereal, or simply eaten right out in the garden. The plant also adds visual interest without requiring you to add another kind of flower. White blossoms appear above the green leaves, then turn into small red berries. Because the plant does not take up much space from side to side, it works well on balconies, small patios, and anywhere you cannot devote an entire garden bed to strawberries. Care is pretty simple. Use a pot with drainage holes, place it where it gets morning sun, and keep the soil evenly moist while the plant is flowering and producing fruit. In areas with hot summers, protect it from harsh afternoon sun. A thin layer of straw on top of the soil helps hold moisture and keeps the fruit from touching wet soil. Still, this is not a plant you can forget to water for several days. Small pots dry out very quickly, and birds or slugs may sometimes get to the fruit before you do. Now you know how to get fruit from a compact little plant. But when you need a plant that gives you leaves, bulbs, and its own planting stock for the next season, we move on to the Egyptian walking onion. and that is plant number 2. Plant 2, Egyptian walking onion. This onion does not need you to dig up the underground bulbs to propagate it. It produces small bulbs right at the top, which make the stalk bend down and plant a new generation about one step away from the parent plant. That is why it is commonly called the Egyptian walking onion. Instead of producing only flowers, the plant forms a cluster of small bulbs at the top of the stalk. As the cluster gets heavier, the stalk bends down. If the bulbs touch the soil, they take root and form a new clump. Growing the plant in a container helps you control that process instead of letting it slowly spread across the entire garden bed. Almost every part of the plant can be used. The young leaves can be used like green onions. The bulbs at the top can be sautéed, pickled, or saved for planting. The underground bulbs are edible too, but they usually have a stronger flavor. To keep the plant going for many years, do not dig up all the bulbs at the base. Focus on harvesting the leaves and the bulbs at the top. I usually divide a cluster of bulbs into 3 parts, 1 part for cooking, 1 part for replanting, and the last part for sharing with a neighbor. Use a wide, heavy pot and harvest the bulbs before they fall to the ground. When you need a leafy plant that can be cut again and again and also gives you edible flowers, save a spot near the kitchen door. Plant 3, garlic chives. This is the plant I usually reach for when my eggs, bowl of soup, or pan of vegetables needs a little garlic flavor. But I do not want to peel a whole bulb just to use 1 clove. I step outside the kitchen door, gather a handful of garlic chive leaves, and cut the ones around the outside. That is all there is to it. The center stays untouched, and a few weeks later, the clump fills back in just like before. That is what I like about this plant. You do not pull it up, sow it again, or wait for a new growing season. You cut it the right way, then let the plant do the rest. The leaves have a mild garlic flavor that is not as strong as garlic bulbs. You can chop them into eggs, potatoes, or soup, or sprinkle them over a dish right before serving. Then the plant starts producing clusters of white flowers. A lot of people cut them off as soon as they see them, but I usually leave a few clusters for the bees. The rest can be separated into small flowers and sprinkled over a salad. They are edible and still have that mild garlic flavor. Care is not complicated either. Give the plant a few hours of sun, use a pot with drainage holes, and water when the top layer of soil starts to dry out. Do not add too much fertilizer. Too much nitrogen will only make the leaves soft, long, and likely to flop over. When the clump gets too crowded after a few years, take it out, divide it into several sections, and replant them. 1 old pot can give you 3 or 4 new pots, but there is a point when the garlic chives are still just waking up, and there is almost nothing else in the garden ready to pick. That is when another leafy vegetable is already ready, and it tastes as tart as freshly squeezed lemon juice. Plant 4, sorrel. The 4th plant is sorrel. This is one of the first plants I watch for in early spring because while many pots are still nothing but bare soil, it has already started pushing up fresh green leaves. I often pick a leaf and taste it right beside the pot. It has a fresh, tart flavor, almost like it has a few drops of lemon juice in it. Young leaves can be chopped into salads, soups, sauces, or sandwiches. You do not need to use very much. Just a little is enough to brighten up a dish without reaching for more lemon juice or vinegar. When harvesting, do not cut the whole clump down to the ground. Take the larger outer leaves first and leave the young growth in the center untouched. The plant will keep producing new leaves, so 1 pot can give you several harvests throughout the season. Sorrel likes cool weather. When summer gets too hot, the leaves may become smaller and tougher, and the flavor may get sharper. In hot areas, I would place the pot where it gets morning sun but has shade in the afternoon. If flower stalks appear, cut them off so the plant keeps putting its energy into the leaves. This is not the kind of vegetable you harvest by the basket every day. Its value comes from giving you leaves early and adding a naturally tart flavor. Sorrel gives you a harvest above the soil, but the next plant hides all of its value underneath, and the pot will keep that root system from taking over the entire garden. Plant 5, horseradish. If you have a corner of the garden where plants tend to spread out of control, grow horseradish in a container instead of planting it directly in the ground. Even a small piece of root left behind can grow back in a spot you thought you had cleared. In a garden bed, that is a nuisance. but in a deep pot that strong root system becomes an advantage. You know exactly where it is easy to check, and you do not have to dig up the entire garden when it is time to harvest. I usually wait until the weather cools down, then take the pot down and dig out the larger roots to use. Do not take all of them. Keep the crown with a healthy section of root, place it back in the soil, and the plant will keep growing for the next season. Horseradish root has a very strong, spicy flavor. You only need to grate a small amount and mix it with vinegar and a little salt to serve with meat, potatoes, or sauces. Make only as much as you need, because the flavor gradually fades after the root is grated. Use a deep, sturdy pot with drainage holes and put it in its permanent spot before planting. Keep the soil moderately moist, but do not let water sit around the roots. That wraps up the group of plants that give you edible fruit, leaves, and roots. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel, and then we will move on to the group of herbs that handle neglect better in the sun. Plant 6. Thyme. Have you ever bought a healthy green pot of thyme, only to find the base turning dark, the stems going soft, and the plant dying a few weeks later even though you watered it regularly? There is a good chance the plant did not die from a lack of care. It died because the soil held water for too long. I start with a pot that has at least one large drainage hole. Then I mix 2 parts potting mix with 1 part perlite or pumice. I add only a small amount of well-rotted compost instead of filling the pot with compost. The goal is for water to drain quickly through the bottom when you water, rather than sitting around the roots. After planting, I place the pot where it gets at least 6 hours of sun and is not blocked by other containers. Before each watering, I push my finger about 2 knuckles into the soil. If it still feels damp underneath, I do not water. If it feels dry, I slowly water the entire surface of the pot until water runs out the bottom, then empty any water left in the saucer. When I need some, I cut about 5 to 8 centimeters from the tips of the green stems. I use those pieces with grilled meat, potatoes, or soup, or dry them for later. Do not cut deep into the brown bare stems because the plant has a hard time growing back from there. If thyme rewards you for knowing when to water less, the next plant gives you the biggest reward when you know exactly when to cut it and how to preserve the harvest for months. Plant 7. Greek Oregano. The 7th plant is Greek Oregano. Before you buy one, gently crush a leaf between your fingers. If the scent is weak, do not choose the plant just because the label says oregano. Look for a sturdy plant with green leaves and a base that is not yellow or soft. The leaves can be used fresh or dried for pizza, tomato sauce, grilled meat, and vegetables. I usually harvest in the morning after the dew has dried and before the plant is in full bloom. I only cut the tips of the green stems and never take more than 1/3 of the plant at a time. This gives me leaves to use while also encouraging the plant to grow more branches. I tie whatever I do not use into small bundles and hang them in a dry, dark place with good airflow. Once the leaves are crisp, I rub them off the stems and store them in an airtight jar. Do not crush them until you are ready to use them. I still leave a few flowering stems for the bees. If the center of the plant becomes woody and produces fewer leaves, divide the plant or start a new one from a young cutting. Some plants are grown in containers because they are easier to harvest that way, but the next plant needs a container to keep its roots from spreading. Plant 8. Mint. If you have ever planted a small clump in the ground and then found it growing a full meter away, you understand why mint should be kept in a container. The plant spreads through underground stems, so I place the pot on a hard surface or raise it off the ground. Every now and then, lift the pot and check underneath. If roots are growing through the drainage holes, cut them off before they take root in the ground. Mint is very useful near the kitchen. The leaves can be used in tea, lemonade, sauces, and desserts. When harvesting, cut each stem just above a pair of leaves. The plant will grow new branches, so harvesting also helps keep it short and full. Any leaves you do not use can be dried. Healthy stems can be placed in water until they grow roots, then planted in a new pot. Older leaves and small stem scraps can go into the compost. Mint needs more consistent moisture than thyme and oregano, so do not grow them together in the same pot. And now there is only one final container left. It does not give you anything for the kitchen, but it produces material that supports the other 8 containers. Plant 9. Comfrey. Bocking 14. This last plant is not grown for the dinner table. You grow it so you can cut the leaves and return organic material to the garden. I am talking about Comfrey Bocking 14. Make sure you get this exact variety. Do not buy a plant labeled only Comfrey. Bocking 14 does not spread by seed, but its roots are still very strong, so it needs a large pot, and you cannot let the roots grow down into the ground. Once the plant is established, cut the large outer leaves and leave the young growth in the center. You can let the leaves wilt, tear them into smaller pieces, and spread a thin layer over the soil in your pots. Or you can chop the leaves and mix them into the compost with dry leaves, shredded cardboard, or small twigs. To make a liquid plant feed, put the leaves in a bucket, add water, cover it loosely, and let it break down outdoors. Then strain it, dilute it, and test it on one pot first. Comfrey should not be used as a vegetable or made into tea for drinking. So now you have 9 plants that give you fruit, leaves, roots, seasonings, and organic material for the garden. How to choose the right perennial plants for your containers and your area. Before you take this list to the garden center, I want you to check 2 things. This part is essential. First, choose the right plant. For strawberries, look for the Alexandria Alpine strawberry in the Fragaria vesca group, instead of buying just any plant labeled strawberry. These strawberries produce small fruit, grow well in containers, and handle light shade better than many common garden strawberries. For Egyptian walking onions, look for Allium cross proliferum. Harvest the bulbs at the top before the stalks fall over if you do not want the plant to keep multiplying. For garlic chives, look for Allium tuberosum. The cobalt variety grows in a more even, compact clump that works better in containers. For sorrel, look for edible leaf sorrel, Rumex acetosa, not wood sorrel from the oxalis group. Horseradish should be labeled Armoracia rusticana, and it needs a deep pot. Thyme should be the culinary kind, Thymus vulgaris, not an ornamental creeping variety. Oregano should be Greek oregano, Oreganum vulgar subspecies hirtum. For comfrey, choose only Bocking 14 because this variety is sterile and does not spread by seed. Second, look at your growing area. In colder regions, focus on Egyptian walking onions, garlic chives, sorrel, mint, and horseradish. But group the pots together away from the wind, wrap them with insulating material, or move them into an unheated shed. In zones 6 through 8, you can grow almost everything on this list as long as you keep thyme and oregano, which prefer drier soil, separate from mint, strawberries, and sorrel, which need more moisture. In the hot south, place strawberries and sorrel where they get morning sun, and make sure oregano and thyme have excellent drainage. The cold hardiness zone on the label is only dependable when the plant is growing in the ground, not when its roots are sitting inside a thin pot. The plant names may be the same, but every person has different sunlight, temperatures, and containers. Choosing the right variety, the right pot size, and the right location will determine whether the plant lives for many years or lasts for only one season. I know these 9 plants will help you grow more food, seasonings, and useful garden material without turning your garden into a full-time job. But if you know another perennial that grows especially well in a container, share it in the comments. I have shared a lot of ways to protect your home and garden from pests. But today's video is about plants that can keep giving back for years. And these are only a small part of the many plants I have tried to grow, gotten wrong, and then adjusted along the way. Did you find this video helpful? Out of the 9 plants we covered today, which ones have you grown before, and which one makes you want to give it a try? Do not forget to subscribe to the channel. I believe Billy's Smart Homestead is built by both you and me, a community of people who want to be more self-reliant and do things for themselves in a society that is slowly getting used to buying everything new instead of learning how to make better use of what we already have.